How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and if you're watching this video on the day it comes out, it should be Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day, everybody. And in light of the day, let's talk about the remake of Mother's Day. This is from 2010, directed by Darren Lynn Bousman, who the top of this DVD is quick to remind you directed Saw 2, 3, and 4. This movie stars Rebecca De Mornay and Jaime King. Jaime King, this is another one of her remakes. Jaime King was also in the remake of Silent Night, Deadly Night that was simply entitled Silent Night. And also, she was in the remake of My Bloody Valentine. So yeah, this is the third remake, the third holiday horror that I've covered on this channel that features Jaime King. So that's pretty cool. And this also features a pre-Daredevil performance from Deborah and Woll. So that was always great to see her there. This movie is about a group of criminals. One's shot and they return to their old family home. However, they find that it has been foreclosed on and a new family is there and they were having a party. So they take all the partygoers hostage and they call their mom, who is sort of the head of the family and the head of their criminal organization. She comes in and says, "We need to flee the country, but in order to pay the people that are going to help us to do that, we need $10,000. So they're going to try to come up with the money, and the hostages are going to try to escape. Now, like I said, this is a remake of the 1980s film from Troma, and the original was a really low-budget riff on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, essentially. And really low budget, but it had a lot of passion behind it. It wasn't great, but it was pretty fun just in what it is, you know? But you think on paper that this would be better. We got a much bigger budget, we got a professional crew, a professional director, professional actors. On paper, you would think that this would be the cleaned up version of what the last film was. But this is a case of making it technically better and in turn making it significantly worse. The original was cheesy fun. This is boring, and I really want to stress, there may be some people new to the channel, I'm not a comedy teardown channel. I know there are several people on YouTube that find little B movies and just make fun of them, and I'm not one of those guys, and I try to avoid constantly complaining, and I want to give everything a fair review. But all that being said, I want to say, this movie is terrible, and I don't use that word lightly. It has a 1-2 punch of nothing happening, and then also having way too long of a runtime. This movie is almost 2 hours, and nothing really happens. It becomes where the first one was just insanity in the woods. They try to turn this into a home invasion thriller. And when you do, like, captivity stuff, the best example I always say is Wes Craven's movie Red Eye. In Red Eye, the heroes and the villains were both clever, and they both found ways to stop each other from achieving their goal. In this one, neither group's clever. Things will just happen to work out for the bad guys, for the story to keep progressing, and the heroes are so incompetent and don't try anything. And I know in real life, maybe you'd be scared, maybe you wouldn't try anything, but that's not what I want to watch in a movie, is just people cowering in fear for almost 2 hours. Like, what I thought of when I watched this is, you know how there are those old Western movies where there'd be some bad guy and he'd be running the town and then the brave gunslinger would show up and chase him off? This is like a Western movie if the brave gunslinger character never showed up. And these characters, like, they jump into the movie really, really quick. But none of the party guests are super well defined. And in turn, I start to notice who the characters are. They start to stand out from the group when they do something stupid and I get mad at them. I didn't really care for almost anyone here. There's a guy in a red shirt that I think is like the Jaime King's husband. And he is like so complicit with these people to the point where he's basically evil and he's basically on their side. I could not stand this guy. And out of all the group of characters, there was only one couple that did a halfway decent job of resisting. And their plot had the stupidest ending you could have imagined. And yeah, plot-wise, there's so many little things that just never go anywhere, never add up. There's this whole plot where there's a body they try to hide behind a dumpster, and a bunch of stuff comes from that. But the movie forgets about it for long chunks of time where you've almost forgotten about it too, and then all of a sudden they'll throw in a scene with it, and you're like, oh yeah, this was part of the movie. And it amounts to next to nothing as well. So, yeah, that's in there. All the deaths, like, almost all of them, are really disappointing. And you're like, okay, we built up all this stuff just to get to that. And that's it. And then there's even, like, a scene towards the end where, you know, this is a housewarming party they're attending, and there's something super useful in one of the presents. It just doesn't come up until the end. This movie, it's hard to get through. The only saving grace, the character Mother, she's an interesting character. The actress does a pretty good job. She's motherly, but then can turn cold on a dime. And she's a pretty good threatening villain. And that's about the only good thing in this movie. But even then, she's not perfect. Several times in the film, she'll be like, don't you know? I've done all this because I'm so big and smart, and I train my kids to do this. Yeah, when you look at their operation, it's just such a mess. You know, she goes on about being a master planner, but then you look at her actual operation, and it's just garbage. So, yeah, even she's not perfect. And yeah, basically a whole lot of nothing happening. You don't know anything about any of the characters. You don't really care for any of them. And they don't do anything clever to try to escape. And it's just, yeah, it's a captivity thriller without any good captivity elements. And terrible, terrible characters for the most part. And it goes almost 2 hours. You know, not to dig on this movie too hard, but I had heard the phrase bored to tears before, and I never really understood it. But I'm, you know, about halfway through this movie, I'm slumped over on the couch, and I feel something in my eye, and I'm like, oh, bored to tears. I get it now. I understand that phrase. But yeah, this is bad. And it's not a so bad it's good movie. You have one character with the mother that's kind of interesting, but it's just not worth it. You know, the original, cheesy, dumb fun, at least check that out if you want to see something. But here, it's just great. Also, I mean, here it's not great, rather, sorry. Also, speaking of the original, Lloyd and I think Charles, the guy who directed the first one, and Lloyd Kaufman, head of Troma, they have a cameo in this movie, and I had heard about it. They're in a commercial on TV. The commercial is playing in the background, and you can barely see it. It's only on screen in a close enough view to see it really well for like half a second. And I'm like, why did you shoot this whole commercial with Lloyd Kaufman as a cameo if we're gonna see it for like half a second and the TV it's playing on is on mute? Anyway, without further ado, I want to analyze this a little bit more, so I'm going to start talking about the plot more specifically. I'm not going to do any major spoilers, I won't be talking about the end bits, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what this movie's about. We open up in a hospital. Mother is dressed as a nurse, and she is stealing a baby. It's an interesting enough hook. However, this is revealed later in the movie, and I feel like it could have been a good twist if it wasn't spoiled here, so there is that. Anyway, it also has the theme of, these babies could have gone on to live normal lives and been happy, productive members of society if they weren't stolen. That's an interesting, creepy concept, but they don't play with it. It's maybe brought up once or twice, but that's one of those things that is dark and disturbing and messed up that I would have loved to see more analysis on. But whatever. Anyway, we then cut to our main characters, and they're throwing a house party, and it's Jaime King and her husband. Jaime King's kind of the de facto main character. She has this whole sequence in the van later, but she's not really more interesting than any of the other characters. And there is a bit of bad direction right here at the beginning, where you see Jaime King, she has a few intro shots in front of this mirror, and then it cuts to another girl, and I was like, wait, we just saw the intro shots with Jaime King, and now it just cuts to this other girl really quickly. For a second, I was like, wait, why does she look different? Oh, it's a different character. Anyway, so they're throwing the party, and they go down to the basement. It's a basement party for whatever reason. I don't know. It may be because there's a storm coming. That might be it. But them and their party guests go into the basement. And then we cut to the criminals, very Reservoir Dog style, in the back of a car. One of them's been shot. They're bleeding out, but they can't go to the hospital. And they decide to go to their old house. They go in there, and it looks completely different. It's a nice, cleaned up house, and they're like, wait, is this the right address? And they find out that while they've been away, Mother's house has been foreclosed on, and now someone else is living there. A few notes with this. In the original, the house was a mess. It was an interesting set. Here, it's just a so-so normal house. And also, with the bad direction, we were recently just showed a security guard getting stabbed in the nurse stealing a baby scene. So this scene initially feels like it's a continuation of that scene, but no, you pretty quickly see it's a different group of characters. Also, when they go in, the house seems to be deserted because all the characters are partying in the basement for some reason. Why are they in the basement? I don't know. But when they break in, I'm like, wait, isn't this the house where all the party people were at? Why are they not there anymore? Oh, they're in the basement for some reason. Okay. But anyway, of course, people start to see them, and they take everybody at the party hostage. One of them is a doctor, so he's going to try to help the guy that got shot, and they call their mom, and that's when Mother comes into this movie. The action gets started so quick that you don't really get to know any of the hostage characters, but then it takes a minute for Mother to actually show up, and she's the only good thing in this movie. So when she just show up, there's kind of a funny shot, her introduction. It's the feet, and it pans up to see her face. But she doesn't look scary. It's this big reveal for what looks like a normal-looking lady, but whatever. It's a case of the script knows she's evil, but she's done nothing to really, be intimidating yet. Anyway, she gets there, and she said, You lost your contact with me. I would have been able to tell you I wasn't still here. But that's also a weird thing with this script, is they had to be able to go to this house to take people hostage, so they had to in some way lose contact with Mother. But they just called Deborah Ann Woll once they're there, and she tells Mother what happened so Mother can show up really quick. They make this whole big deal about how they're not in contact, and that sets up the hostages, but they were still able to get in contact with her relatively easily because they want Mother to actually be in the movie. If it was that easy to contact her, you think this whole plot wouldn't have happened, but they're trying to have the best of both worlds, and in turn we get this really clunky plot element. But whatever, Mother's a master planner, right? Well, she says, look, you guys are on the news, we need to get out of the country, and the person that's going to do that for us, he needs $10,000 to take us away. And one of the guys goes, well, what about that money I've been sending you? And she goes, I haven't been in this house. The homeowners must have the money. And they say, what? We don't know what you're talking about. And she gets mad and tries to, torture them to get the money out of them. But really, it's one of those cases where right off the bat, I'm like, the money's probably in a dead letters office, right? If they don't know about it, whatever. But she's convinced they're hiding it. It would be a major plot point, a major MacGuffin, but kind of like the dumpster body I referenced earlier, it's one of those things that comes up and then gets forgotten about, and then comes up again and becomes a plot point later. But anyway, there's several schemes to try to get money from these people. There's several, don't do this or we'll torture you, which leads to some so-so sequences. But a lot of the sequences in this movie feel very sequency. A case of the writers going, oh dang, we actually have to have something happen in this movie. Well, what if the characters did this? What if when they're out in the van, they're these two random girls that walk up to the ATM and we have a sequence with them, which could have been cut out of the movie and we don't miss anything, but hey, it's kind of interesting, and it's never very interesting. But yeah, things just get forgotten about, nothing really happens, it's almost 2 hours long, and that was very, very painful to sit through all that. And then later on in the movie, they introduce like personal drama among the characters, and I'm like, a couple people are dead by this point. Why do we care about this personal drama? And another plot point that goes nowhere, the doctor, he's one of the few that's relatively interesting, and he's trying to save the guy upstairs, and he's talking to Deborah Ann Woll and trying to convince her she's kind of the sheltered one. She falls into that good guy amongst a group of bad guy trope, and he's trying to explain to her how Mother's manipulating her and trying to tell her that Mother's not really a good person, doesn't really have your best interest at heart. And you think that this would lead to her either changing sides or her at least getting out of there, but minor spoiler, this plot point goes nowhere. As much time as they spend on it, it goes nowhere, and the end of the Doctor's story is super, super disappointing. And yeah, so none of the little sequences they do are great. So many plot points go nowhere. It's long, it's boring, and the only good thing is sometimes Mother's performance is kind of interesting. Overall, the first one was cheesy. Technically, it wasn't great, but it was dumb, stupid fun in the vein of Chainsaw. This one is just boring, it's soulless, and I can't really recommend it. It's a home invasion movie with no clever escape routes, no characters we care about. Sometimes the kids like to be a little energetic and they try to mimic the kids from the first one, but because the movie is so boring, it feels disingenuous, and the cinematography is all just shot really standard thriller style. And I like the old one for being trashy and cheesy, and this is just clean and standard. It's more professionally done, but it's so boring. And yeah, one of the worst movies I've covered on the channel, and that is saying something. It's not so bad it's good. It's not amusingly flawed. It's not stupid in any fun way. It's just long and boring, and no one does anything, and I care for none of the characters. And like I said, I'm not an Angry Rant YouTube channel. I'm not a comedy teardown channel. Even though I want to give everything its fair shake, I just really don't like this movie. Go watch the original for cheesy, stupid fun, but this just isn't great. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a playlist on the bottom. This should be my remakes playlist. You can see me talk about a bunch of remakes there, including like the remake for Psycho, the remake for Texas Chainsaw, stuff like that. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very soon. Remakes playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.